And damn it.
You fixed like the 7 Ashanti, but before we got there, it was Ashante.
Oh yeah, I said it Ashante 5 times before I corrected myself.
Hey, but you know what? I'm so used to George doing like just mispronouncing shit just for the fuck of it. I just roll with it.
No,
Like
I'm doing it on purpose though.
I know.
Like, you know,
At all.
I just be
shout out to
sliding.
Ashante.
I knew from the day you
to
walked up on me and asked me about choir theory that it was gonna be an interesting ride with you, and I just have been rolling with that shit.
Now, usually what y'all try to do me is the poem.
Another banger. That'll go down in motherfucking history, honey.
Hey, so as y'all join us, we just talking about how country George is.
Yes.
He probably the quintessential. You know what I'm saying? Country nigga. Bryan, Texas representing. Yeah.
Hey, shout out to everybody in small town. You feel me, America? You know, especially my small town Southerners. What's up, Angela, Sharon, Paris, Tori? How y'all doing? You know, education is elevation.
Y'all come in.
Today we're gonna be getting into that reparations conversation. Shout out to everybody in California. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But real quick, as y'all come on in, as y'all can see above us here, you feel me? The Chop Up Show is on Apple Podcasts. So if you have an iPhone, which most of you sheep have an iPhone, following the trends.
Follow what you would.
You know what I'm saying? Make sure y'all go follow, subscribe to Chop Up Show on Apple Podcasts. Leave a review. Go ahead and rate that thing. Cause y'all, I mean, y'all fuck with us, we fuck with y'all. So go ahead and handle that for us.
Handle it for us. We gonna close this too. I heard everybody say on YouTube. We was talking about it today. We had a YouTube mix and mingle. I got to meet pretty much all of the black YouTubers that's in my content class, except for the ones that was in Brazil. So a lot of great collabs coming our way. But what I learned though is that on Facebook and on YouTube, they do not play with even you having the TV up too loud and the copyrighted content coming through on the things and them. So yeah, I would have to close my door. My wife listening to the TV up loud.
Yeah.
Hey, Tori said I'll subscribe to yours and subscribe to mine. Tori just
done.
Where you at, and we got you.
Yeah, Tori, that's easy. That was easy right there. Shout out to you, Tori. Tori Strickland. You know, we got Austin in the house. Hey, yeah, but listen though, it's been a lot of things going on with this Black Lives Matter. I promise to the people that's watching this that the Chop Up Show today, we're gonna promise to give you one of the most nuanced, unique conversations about nonprofit industrial complex, about pathology of Black people, about accountability, about hit pieces, about, you feel me, all that right there. We're gonna be getting into that. Y'all keep, you know what I'm saying, stay on tune in that. And we also gonna be getting into the reparations conversation. I apologize, we didn't get into it last week, but this week though, we gonna get into it.
So before we go get into it,
my bad. I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge a lot of people still coming in, still dropping where they representing from. I can't even catch up a lot of names right now, but we see y'all. We appreciate y'all. Y'all in this thing. And it's good to see y'all again too. You know, I'm not gonna lie. Thursdays be coming around quick. I don't know. We was on Mondays. It'd be like, dang, when is Monday? Okay, it's Monday, whatever. But these Thursdays been hitting. But I say one thing: Thursday hitting, y'all ain't missed a beat. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to everybody who's been coming in, who we didn't necessarily get to acknowledge. We see y'all. We love y'all. And it's good to have y'all tonight, for sure.
Consistently showing up. But who trying to bring it in?
I'll bring it in.
I bet. With that being said, we're gonna start the show the way that we always start the show. Let's get it.
In the city, we gon' slide, bet I be there pronto. Me, my guys, we really live. Lord forgive me, pay my tithes. Please don't have me reach inside. And that's in the console. Keep the semi when I ride. Lit off Henny when I drive. In the city, we gon' slide. Bet I be there pronto.
Education is elevation. What up, Chop Nation? It's your boy George Lee, aka Conscious Lee. Don't forget the Lee. You can find me at consciouslee.com. Also, GeorgeLeeSpeaks.com is still up too for all your bookings, all your online classes, all that right there. Who I'm with?
Hey, it's your girl Toya G. Happy to be here with y'all tonight. The same way he dropped his info, I'm gonna drop mine. Higher definition LEC.com. You've been doing spring cleaning around your home. You've been doing spring cleaning, you know, with your school situation, with your work situation. But have you spring cleaned your mind? Work with me, talk to me. Let's get you back on track and excited for what you can accomplish for the rest of this year. I'm a mindset coach. I'm a leadership coach. I'm an empowerment coach. I want to put y'all on game about ways to refine and kind of reconfigure. The same way we want high definition, we refine and reconfigure, we refurbish our tech. We're going to do the same thing with your goals and your aspirations. So tap in with me. I'm trying to show y'all some love. Y'all show me some love back. We're going to make sure we take this thing to the next level. Live your life in higher definition. We are waiting for, and I'm pointing the wrong way. I know I like to point in my boxes. We lost somebody. He's going to come back in a second, working out his tech issues as the political plug. But in the meantime, I want to tap in, Lee, real quick with what was I thinking about this week? We got Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? And I know we're about to talk about that with Lee. With the plug when he comes back. But you know, are Black women, or is this the new? Is this a recipe? One question I've had about this, and I don't want to touch on what the plug gonna talk about. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Do you feel like this is a recipe for the uplift of American politics and society, or do you feel like this is a recipe for some new scapegoats for a lot of the issues we see? And I'm just asking this question real quick. Actually, I don't want you to answer it. I don't want you to answer it. The plug is back. The plug is back. So plug, I want to posit a question that maybe you can decide if we come back to or not. But what I was asking the people, just thinking about this Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation, one thing I keep coming back to is, are Black women the new kind of saviors, as we've always been, of Black society and the Black politics? We're starting to see in the tides change. Are they the new scapegoats that we're about to be looking at and seeing? And maybe the new culpable people who are not as revolutionaries might have thought, because they're now in line and in the fold with a lot of the politics we've always already disagreed with. I've been thinking about these things. We can come back to that, but that's what I want to think about, or that's what I've been thinking about with this Ketanji Brown Jackson thing. But I'm gonna turn it back over to you. You back? This is me thinking out loud.
Right now, you ready? So with all, I'm the one that really needs no introduction. But with that being said, to get into the snapshot, as what's being discussed, we have the first Black woman that is sitting on the Supreme Court with Ketanji Brown Jackson. First thing I want to address is there was a comment that was already in there that kind of spoke to her record on pedophiles and sentencing and all those types of issues, right? Because I feel like, Toya, where the direction you was going in is actually where I wanted to start us in terms of having that conversation. With really quickly, I'm pretty sure y'all was up on game on how the confirmation went down. And just real quick, in one sentence or one word, how would y'all describe that whole process? You know what I'm saying, coming out with her coming out on top. How would y'all describe that, George?
Grotesque.
Grotesque. Okay. Confirmation process was grotesque. Why would you use that word, that language, Lee?
Because despite her accolades and despite her experiences and everything she had to bring to the table, all her accolades were still questioned. You feel me? I think that the way that people have been able to obscure all the stuff she's been able to do, how they've been able to, I want to use all my words today, how they pathologize the shit that she did in the, in the courtroom, how it don't matter. Like, I think it's been very, like grotesque, like real nasty, real tasteless, like goddamn. So that's what the Black woman got to go through to be on Supreme Court. That white man was crying and throwing hissy fits and shit, and this man, y'all asking her about her baby's racist and can she partially judge, a Catholic. Literally today I seen on Twitter a whole bunch of different conservatives talking about she's the most liberal Supreme Court justice on there, and can she, be impartial and not put that on the Supreme Court? Just like, boy, y'all is doing a lot. But that was my long-winded response.
Yeah, and while Toya handled what she handling, I think that the word I use to describe it real quick is theater. It's fake. It's even the accusations of liberalism are mainly associated with the fact that she's left-leaning and she's Black. You know what I'm saying? Outside of her getting up there and completely denouncing liberalism, outside of her completely denouncing Democrats, outside of her completely denouncing Joe Biden, it wasn't nothing she could do. Like, any liberal that would have been placed on the court during this time would be considered according to them, the most liberal ever, right? So it was theater. It was a play. It was a joke. You know what I'm saying? Theater is the word I would use. Toya?
I think, too, one of the things we can't forget is that her confirmation process was 11 days longer than Amy Coney Barrett's. Somebody who does not even have a judge, and maybe that's why it was so short or so much longer in comparison to that. She doesn't even have a confirmation record. I'm sorry, a judging record to speak to. So we can't sit up there and nitpick a lot of her decisions. You forget that in comparison to the last, nominee, was that there's no decisions that have been rendered by her to sit there and sift through. So in a lot of ways that was frustrating to see. Also, walking away to highlight the grotesqueness that Lee was talking about. I know y'all saw the clip of what happened at the end of the confirmation. If not, y'all go get on Twitter and go find it. Where a vast majority, after she was confirmed, of Republicans stormed out of the chambers where the confirmation happened. The only one, and we don't applaud and give cookies and shit and pat people on the head for doing their job, so we're not finna gas him up too hard, but the only Republican that's seen in the pan or the camera screen of this angle applauding the confirmation was Mitt Romney, right? Who has often been the Republican that's willing to sit in the gap and sit on the ropes and kind of be the intermediary between logic and good faith and good sense and his own political aspirations and beliefs. And so, it was really, when you say grotesque, it was sad, it was pitiful that, again, because this is the second time of many different times we've seen them be sad and poor losers in the last year and a half when they don't get their way and they don't get what they want. We saw it with the election results, right? They are poor, sad, pitiful losers. And it's really, I don't know how you can be excited about being a part of a party that behaves in this way, right? Just in the nature of politics. So that's what blew my mind.
And to Sharon, Peep Gang Sharon.
Hold on, let me do it.
I would say it shortly though, simply though. This be like, I feel like what I'm Peep Game on, because we're gonna get into this when we get into the Black Lives Matter conversation, is a lot of the narratives that we be getting fed in the Black community. It really be conservative hit pieces. And listen, a lot of times too, they have access into our communities in ways, because listen, I grew up with no cable. I was already normalized to Fox News and seeing them as being legitimate news people. You see what I'm saying? So the idea that she gave pedos short time sentences is really cap, because a lot of those judges that tried to say that she did that, when you look at their track record, they also didn't go with the recommended state or recommended federal, you feel me, process.
But her ruling was within the guidelines, though. You feel me? Yeah. Like even within the questioning, when they attempted to call her out on it, they were saying, well, you didn't think to go above the guidelines? No. I made a decision based on, you know what I'm saying, what was already laid out. So like that entire conversation, it's like, we're gonna talk about hit pieces like George said, but it's again caught up in the fact that the conservative drawing the line is accusing somebody of pedophilia. That's like the Hillary Clinton, the Pizzagate, like, right? Like, it's always just when they want to just pull some shit out their ass, they can play with that pedophilia game.
And we got to be aware of cherry picking. When they talked about the 7 or 8 cases, I think they tried to point to, this was an attempt to undermine, like, just do the math on it, right? Over hundreds of cases that she presided over, right? So this is not a pass to legitimize pedophilia, but this is also a time to say, if we're being honest about the standards that we hold for humans who are also political figures, and you disagree with the outcome of some of those sentences, just in a numbers game perspective, your own life, you have made less than perfect decisions in relationship to your family, to your job, to the decisions that you make, but you do so within certain parameters and guidelines and standards that you set for yourself. Even other people don't appreciate it. You might raise your child a little bit different. You might do your job a little bit different. There's a lot of things, right, that we hold in comparison to that we just kind of have to be mindful of. There was small amounts of data that was pulled to make this point. George is pointing at Miss Maisha, who said they pushed the sexual predators like Kavanaugh and Thomas, but consistently devalued Justice Jackson. I would add on to that the Republicans are hell-bent on holding her accountable for these pedophilia cases, but have also passed a lot of legislation in some of these states very quietly to allow child marriage. So what are we doing here?
I mean, there's no conservative outrage surrounding what's happening in Tennessee right now
at all, and they are pushing to eliminate any minimum age to be able to participate with children. So it's like, let's be honest and make sure it cuts both ways. This is not an excuse for politicians, because I don't get in the habit of making those, right? But at the same time, we also have to be honest about the inevitabilities of the state, the inevitabilities of the court and the system, and the people we have to have there, how we have to kind of navigate and hold in juxtaposition some truths about this process in order to get, air quote, because we haven't seen anything that she's done yet, the right people in the right positions. All right.
And with that being said, that's the snap chop. We can go ahead and get into our first chop for the night.
Yeah, man. This first chop, the conscious chop. A lot of conversation
what we doing
over the past 5 years, I think has been real big on reparations. I think that I'll be interested really to actually, before I get into this, I'm actually curious. When I say the word reparations, Chat, Toya, Damo, how in the F do y'all even define that? When people be like, what's reparations? What did you say? Like, what is that?
I mean, when you say, like, when we had this conversation, like, today, it's like money. We're talking about the government paying Black people money for some type of, for slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's when just baseline, because a lot of people be talking about like investing in opportunity zones and doing like what they did in North Carolina, that type of stuff. When people bring up the conversation of like us wanting reparations, the first place I go to is Black people getting money for slavery.
Okay. The first thing I think about when I hear reparations, I'm not gonna lie, is just like this impossible attempt to assuage what can't really be corrected. So when I hear reparations, I'm just like, I get it, but like, what is an ample amount? What is an adequate approach? What does it mean to even? So my eyes kind of gloss over in a way. Like the Negro in me wants to be excited about it, but it really never plays as something that can be material for me in a lot of ways. And so I think reparations they represent kind of these good to hear, feel goody kind of components of what corrective action could look like, but I don't really ever take it serious.
Yeah.
I've never taken the idea of reparations serious. Like 3 acres and a mule, pay back the descendants of slaves. That would be, like, that's cute, but I don't buy it. Never have.
Yeah, for me, I think that I kind of sit in between y'all a little bit, and I guess a little nuance. When I hear reparations, I feel like I've trained myself to think about state-sanctioned violence and literally the state, you feel me, trying to reprimand or trying to pay back people for that state-sanctioned violence. And I say state-sanctioned violence, I recognize, and we know that shit go way past slavery, you feel me? Like, one would argue, we grew up in the 90s. Shit, my daddy was in and out the penitentiary for the war on drugs uniquely. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think about it in that way. But also, like Toya said, it's like, hey, I also see a lot of the suffering that Black people go through in America uniquely as be like, hey, in order to get the 5, we got to go through 3 and 4. Hey, y'all, we had to enslave y'all to get iPhones and to be able to have YouTube and to be able for y'all to have y'all podcast. So if you like your podcast and having your iPhone, and we had to go through slavery. So I see America and the world seeing like slavery and suffering of Black people as a necessary evil. So I kind of see it as being like, y'all niggas ain't getting that. The sky's blue. 2 + 2 is 4. Niggas supposed to be oppressed. Like, what are you talking about? So you know what I'm saying? I kind of sit in that too, kind of in a pragmatic kind of understanding. But
yeah, I mean, we got JM here. He said reparations to me is money and land and access, which that's why I said, like, the first thing I go to is money. I mean, because like ultimately, it's like, what else? Really, what else makes a material difference? Like, there's nothing else really that could
money is just dissuasive to me in terms of it, because what does money mean in terms of quantifying and reconciling for 400, now probably 500 years? Like, what is that? How do you quantify that? How do you calculate that? How do you count that up? And then on top of the vast, just like different, like, you had Black people who had to move out west. You had Black people who had to leave their families and move up north. You had Black people who were subjugated to violence because they stayed in the South. How do you quantify the value of those experiences and the trauma that people experience, having to leave their homes, having to leave their families, having to figure out how to navigate a Jim Crow, like the learning curve that it takes to not get your ass beat on the street? Like, how do you pay me for that? That's why I'm like, I can list off things that would be nice associated with reparations, but again, it just is so highfalutin and so unrealistic to me because I don't know how you're coming to these numbers. And we have a video, by the way. If y'all haven't watched it, just speaking about the numbers, follow us on Instagram, by the way, at the Chop Up Show, and go watch the video. That's still today pulling hundreds of likes every single day because there's a woman who tries to break down numerically how much we would be owed, and it sparked a lot of conversation and controversy on the page. But go check it out.
When like 300 million a person or some shit like that.
But the way that, and I'm just being honest, y'all. Please don't, y'all gonna feel a certain type of way, but it's like it's the same logic of how much is your time worth? Like you asking people who give an hour of their time for between $15 to $20 an hour, an hour of their time. Think about that. Your life, is worth $15 to $20 an hour. But that's what I'm saying. So like to answer that question, it's like that. Like it can be quantified in a number that's gonna make a material difference. That's why I say money, because it's something that can make a material difference.
Hey, but I like somebody in the comment section said, not just finances, also trying to mitigate it from a legal perspective and kind of passing laws and creating laws. You know what I'm saying? I can see, you know what I'm saying, that being it. Before I read this little tag though, to end that part of the conversation, I think that they would never be able to repay. They don't mean they should try. Goddamn, they don't mean you should try. But we know recently though,
I can never apologize. When somebody wrongs you, that don't mean don't try. You can't. You hurt me bad. You cut me deep. That don't mean don't try to pull me back together again, for sure.
Feel me? Well, we know the California Task Force voted to restrict reparations to descendants of slavery on March 29th. You feel me? A couple of days ago, in a 5-4 vote, the California Reparations Task Force decided to limit reparations to African Americans who can trace their lineage to slavery, starting from those parameters were most likely to survive legal challenges. We know that free Black people who came to the United States in the 19th century or earlier will also be eligible for reparations. The task force cited the trouble in tracing family history and the danger in being captured in enslaved regions. This is a 2-year task force, though, y'all. The first step in the group of it's the first of this kind in the country, and it was created in 2020 when the governor did this. And the last part I want to read is that Black people who cannot trace their ancestry to slavery were considered for inclusion due to systemic racism, but ultimately excluded. California is the home of about 2.6 million African Americans. My question to you two and the people in the chat: can you trace your lineage back to slavery? For the Black people, especially, Black people definitely, obviously, but for the Black people listening and y'all, can you trace your lineage back to slavery using documentation?
No. The deepest that my tracing goes back to when we had this conversation. I even think I made a post on the Chop Up Show page a couple months ago about the Great Migration and kind of understanding where a lot of our families started out in the South and where they kind of went in the different lines of flight that they took and moving around the state. And so I think I can only go back as far as maybe the late 1800s in terms of locating my family in Louisiana and in Mississippi. My grandma came up from Mississippi when she was in like the late 1930s, the mid 1940s maybe. And my grandfather was a little bit older than her, so a little bit earlier than that, moved from Shreveport up to the Kansas City area. But outside of that and beyond that, and even I think some sharecropping happened, but I don't even really know a lot about what they did at the tail end of slavery or how they made that transition kind of like socially. I just know they got out the South. So in terms of going back to the Ivory Coast, no clue. I have no idea what's happening in terms of the West Coast of the continent of Africa and how we started from there.
So I think that you bring an important question. I interpret it as, can you trace your lineage back to the plantation?
So then maybe so. I would assume that my folks didn't migrate too far from that. I thought you meant like the onset of slavery.
That's how I interpret
it. Of it. Okay.
But I could be wrong though. I could be completely wrong.
I would love to know, because then the answer becomes yes. At first I was kind of sad because I don't want to have to pay Ancestry.com.
Why they do Donald like that?
I know, right? What you say?
Yeah.
So I can trace what?
Yeah.
You can trace it back to slavery. That's what you were saying. Like, it's like if you can go back to you going back to those plantations. Because that's how I interpreted the question. Like, is that can you go back? Can you trace it back to being enslaved? And that's the thing about it. We can trace it back to being enslaved. It's the beyond that part that we care about the most, right? They're saying that the bar is for can you find your people on the plantation?
But I think what I'm saying is I'm a step after that. Like I don't have the paperwork to say this. The Adams plantation
was on the plantation.
My grandmother's grandparents were, or that the Johnson plantation was where my granddaddy's uncle's owners were. I don't know that. Like, that's a step removed from what I can prove. I just know.
I can.
We're down south.
No, yeah, I can. My people. They trace. My grandma is actually for the last 20 years been doing a project where she been connecting like our roots all the way back to the plantation in Missouri. So like from like literally from Baltimore to Missouri. Ain't even, you know what I'm saying? We wouldn't even know. On my mama's side, we got some of them people that came from Mississippi, but on my grandma's side, they as Missourians, they was taken from Baltimore, you know what I'm saying, to Missouri in terms of how it traced where they at. And I mean, I got like great, like I know that a certain great ancestors that literally descended from that interaction between the slave master and the the enslaved women on the plantation. So I can go back that far, like, but it's the problem that get created though.
What happens?
Is that how we define black?
Yeah, see, Ian too. I'm thinking it is too though. And I feel like debate messed me up where I always want to ask, what does it mean? But it's just like, hey, what does it mean for California to pay reparations? And like the state wasn't, you feel me? It's like I'm tracing my plantation back to Texas and North Carolina plantation. So if I'm a resident,
you're asking the wrong questions. You're asking the wrong questions.
It's just weird to me thinking like, what? So how does that work?
Yeah.
That part to me, like,
I
guess that's my business though. That the white folks take it up with themselves.
This is what I want to ask y'all though, in that same vein, because this is where I think that starts to get problematic. Is blackness defined by being on the plantation? Right? Because I think the issue with that I have, the biggest issue that I have with reparations is that when we talk about legislation, it's legal language. That means every word, everything has to be defined. There has to be a clear understanding of what we mean by that, right? Mm-hmm. That means that the government would then have to adopt an official definition for black. That does not exist.
Does not exist.
When we talk about black, there are assumptions that we make about what that is and what that means. There's no legal definition for black. Now, people may say Black's Law Dictionary. That's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about on the census, right? Even from the perspective of African American, if we're saying that those two things equate, there's no clear understanding of what you mean by African American, because that actually includes people who live over here who are.
I just did a lecture yesterday, literally about the social construct of race, and I tied it back to the many definitions or the many meanings of race in America. And I just know from digging through the archive of CRT and Black feminism, Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, and then did, you know what I'm saying, especially Kimberly Crenshaw, to go back and look at actual legal cases and think about how the government, where we're talking about Brown versus Board of Education or Plessy versus Ferguson, where the slippage is how do we define black and how the state identifies who is black. And that's when we start getting in the slippery slope. And then me just living in Oklahoma, last thing I say, me living in Oklahoma, me understanding how different indigenous tribes have different, you feel me, resources. White people have been able to literally colonize, exploit. Goddamn, I'll never forget this when I was in moved to Oklahoma. I was in class. I'll be next to Bob and Karen. They are bragging about being 1/8 Native American, 1/16 Native American, and not paying for none of their school. I know this reparations talk opens up the can where it's like, first, you finna undershort us, and you finna let all these white folks infiltrate and say, well, you know, I can say, nigga, I did Ancestry.com. I'm an 8th black. They got the resources to tie that 1/8 black to the plantation. Next thing you know, they finna say, we're getting excluded from man.
Let me further complicate too. I'm gonna add another layer on to what you're saying, because you're saying there's ways for them to nitpick and exclude us from the process in general, is ways to allow white people to come in and be 1/16, 1/8, 1/16 black and kind of get in there. I also think it's kind of faulty in a way, because part of the question is who is black. Part of the question needs to be who has had unnecessary confrontations with anti-blackness that have treated you as though you have descendants of slaves, even though you don't, because Africans come over here and they're not niggas until they get to the United States, but they get treated like niggas. They get denied opportunities. They get set back. Their capacity and capability to provide and develop their lifestyles and their livelihoods, so the reason they came over here in the first place, get cut short because they get treated like American blacks, right? So this is not to take away from the necessity of descendants of slaves from the states to be recouped for the violence, for the structural and institutional violence they've experienced. But when we think about the implications, the reverberations of anti-blackness that have necessitated this in the first place, I don't know if I'm comfortable taking, you know what I'm saying, money. I'll take it, but I don't feel I don't feel good, and I don't feel reconciliation out of taking money because I have descendants of slaves, knowing that my Black counterparts in this country get treated like they're descendants of slaves, feel the implications of that, and still don't necessarily, kind of walk away with something material for the way that anti-Blackness has been shaped in this country. It creates a whole bunch of kind of weird feelings, including the 1/16th individual coming in, including letting the system dictate and determine who get these checks and don't. Like, it always is very icky and sticky to me in some ways, even though I feel the direction that it's going.
And I see Jessica Hodges said native blood is quantified. They have to do us the same thing. This is what I know from being in Oklahoma and from being in debate. That blood quantum shit, it ain't all it's cracked up to be. And being real with you, the blood quantum thing is how they're able to extract resources and land from natives, because once they feel like there ain't enough of y'all to have the blood quantum, they finna start giving it to the mixed blood whites. You see what I'm saying? I can go on and on about blood. I got a homeboy that's half white, half native, but his native is multiple tribes. He got to pick one tribe. He don't get to say he's half native. He got to pick one. So he only gets to say he blood quantum of Chutta people. It's games they play when it comes to their blood quantum shit.
And then we have to understand that like race isn't genetic. There have been studies that have shown that you are genetically closer to some white people than you are to actual other Black people, genetically. Mm-hmm. So the idea that there's a blood representation of how, like when we talk about you have Black, all of that is based on how we view these things culturally. None of it is biological. None of it is genetic. It's literally how we understand these and how we interpret race through how we understand culture, which, when we go back to what it means to be Black, it's caught up too much in understanding the experience of slavery and the reverberations of that. Jim Crow, just de jure, de facto racism, you know what I'm saying? Everything that white flight, prison industrial complex, all of those things, right? How do those things impact how you live your everyday life? You know what I'm saying? It's how that's shaped. But the problem, though, is that we tie it too much to that, and we dismiss like the culture that comes from it, the music, the art.
But I'm thinking of this movie that I watched with Matthew McConaughey, where they went back and historically did this little, like literally they traced back this court case that was in Mississippi in the 70s about the miscegenation laws, where they had this white passing dude that and today we assume as white. You see what I'm saying? But because the one drop rule was so institutionalized in our country, they had literally went back and tied. It was like something Jones. You feel me? Where it was like a mixed biracial enslaved woman was fucking around with this. You feel me? Confederate soldier that turned to be a Union soldier, and they knew, and everybody in the town knew that lineage from them came from your great.
If anything will make a nigga go from the Confederacy to the Union,
put it on his ass. You know what I'm saying? But my point is that even though I'm talking shit about the 1/16th, 1/8 white people that'll be able to be like, I'm for a long time in our country, we did practice the one drop rule though, and it was like, talking about the Plessy versus Ferguson. When you read the actual court case and what actually happened in it, that was the issue. Bro was white passing, but he was Black, and he told him, I'm Black. If y'all read, y'all know the NAACP set it up that way. So it still get to the point where it's like, man,
and
that's where we start getting
I think the part that people miss about Plessy versus Ferguson also, it's just real quick, is just that they was actually testing the segregation laws that existed in Louisiana at the time, using Plessy specifically to show the ambiguity of race and saying who can sit here and who can't. Because it's times where they letting him get through because he looked white, but because of who his parents are and that connection, he's called Black. So it's a very slippery slope, as they say, as Giselle said in the chat, slippery slope.
Well, I guess my last point, I know some people in the comment section is asking and saying it. The task force is about a year away in its work, and it has not created the compensation plan yet. It has not created the compensation plan yet, which could include the range of solutions: free college, assistance buying homes and launching businesses, grants to churches and community organizations. A final proposal to the task force is due in June 2023. So even though we didn't pumped up talking about money, we see that It's gonna be mainly in like subsidizing, giving you shit, hoping that giving that shit to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, how I feel about that, and I'm here curious how y'all feel about that. I see it. I think the skeptic and the pessimist in me is gonna be like, man, so y'all gonna give me a weak ass home and a little bit of college and say, hey, now you're what my great grandkids gonna be. You can't talk about that slavery shit because I gave your great granddad George Lee. We gave him a little bit of college and we gave him a little. So now that just you have to get over it. See, you guys will never get. And that's how I feel. How this should happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Canada has been a great example of the possibilities of what happens post reparations. Right, Canada has done all of the right things in terms of acknowledging its violence towards Indigenous folks. Have a reparation system or something like that set up, and I should have read more up about kind of what that looks like. But Canada has done the work of at least saying we were terrible toward the Indigenous people who were clear occupants here before colonization happened. You know what they've also done? Terrible monstrosities and committed terrible.
They still finding kid bodies right now.
You know what I'm saying? And on top of that, I mean, I'm talking about contemporary violence, contemporary ways, and we can romanticize Canada and the ways that they deal with, race and kind of the more progressive, even more so than the United States way that we orient themselves toward those issues, but still very muchly Indigenous folks and even Black folk up there that deal with the racial implications of what settler colonialism created. So be ye not confused. Reparations don't mean nothing. Systems are still going to work how they're going to work. When it comes down to the letter of the law and the individual, it's kind of like, we can pass all the laws we want to about anti-Blackness and policing. That don't mean the cop that stops me gives a shit about any of that legislation that's been passed, any of these bills. Has any
intention broadening it.
And so
holding it,
I mean, we can pass policies and legislation and take it away from money and put the shift into other institutional changes, but that don't mean nothing to me.
Yeah,
just don't mean nothing.
I'm with that.
Is it emboldened?
It's emboldened. Yeah, it's emboldened. What you were saying, yeah. But I mean, just to piggyback off that before we transition on, Lee.
Yeah.
That's why at the beginning when I said reparations, I said money. They not talking about reparations. They're not talking about. They're talking about neoliberalism, which we'll talk more about that in a second. But y'all heard us mention.
How long? So you got it.
Well, I was just gonna say, the irony I see is that the root word of reparations is repair. Right. And so I think, in terms of doing the system's due diligence, in terms of reconfiguring how we got here in the first place, I see little to no conversation about what that starts to look like in a very material way, because reparations is not just stroking egos with checks and promises of money or land or any of those things. It is grappling with the prison industrial complex. It is confronting the disparities in healthcare. It is addressing and redressing the issues in education and the trade-offs that happen there. So it's a lot of stuff we got to deal with. Rod Cohen has been popping off in the chat a little bit. What are we talking about here with this comment? He said, they say you're joking.
Dignified than being paid.
There's nothing more dignified than being paid for your work. You are owed reparations in the trillions. Sure. Don't disagree. Also, don't think that's enough. So even then, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there is in terms of the legacy that I'm able to leave my family, leave my children, that's some generational wealth. I still don't think it's enough. But
look, you could make up a whole new word, gaziggity million billion type shit, and that still won't be enough. Like, that's just, but we'll take it. I think that's the message that's understood here. Is just that, like, if niggas is giving out trillions of dollars, I'm not gonna say on principle, I'm not about to give you. Just like I took them damn that stimulus. You know what I'm saying? If I take a stimulus, I will take reparations.
Yeah.
But you still gonna hear my mouth though. Like, this ain't a payoff. Y'all got me fucked up. Matter of fact, I'm gonna cash the check, be on the stream talking about fuck the system, fuck the government. You know what I'm saying? Waving myself with my reparations money. Y'all got me fucked up. Slavery was fucked up, and y'all ain't never gonna forget that shit. Waving myself with reparations money. I'm just saying.
Hey, free the guys, man. Hey, listen, free the guys. When we talk about the distinction between crack cocaine and crack, or we talk about, you know what I'm saying, redlining, or we talk about really any state-sanctioned type of violence that was racialized or disproportionately hit Black people, in my mind, reparations is that. So for the white folks and non-Black people listening, that's going to be like, well, you Negroes are just trying to take credit for something your ancestors went through. Hey, peep game. after 1865 and slavery happened, they did not. They might have changed some pins, but like my Damo said in the rap we used to have, goddamn, when we did debate, it did not change the minds. The pen did not change the minds, and the systems and practices kept on going down. Don't get me wrong, we still gonna keep on having these reparations conversations. We still gonna be thinking about doing the research, how to quantify, think about how to look at the violence, think about all the. We're gonna be doing all that. I encourage y'all know, research over me search. Stay tuned and don't take our word for nothing. Do your own research and make sure you stay on, you feel me, a swivel on what's happening with this reparations conversation, not only in California, but also on the federal level and how it might, you know what I'm saying, go other places. But yeah, that was the conscious chat about reparations.
Hey, shout out to Urban Politicians TV. That's actually they phrase out of Houston. Keep your head on the swivel. You feel me? Urban Politicians TV. Y'all check them out. Hip hop news. You know what I'm saying? We ain't really got no, I don't really know them like that, but I watch them. I'm subscribed to their shit. So shout out to them.
Yeah, I ain't subscribed to them, but shout out to them. I'm from Texas, so that's probably what I'm saying. Shout out to them boys in H-Town though, or whoever it is.
Absolutely.
Let's get it to you.
I'll round out the conversation tapping on the newest breaking news that we have received about Black Lives Matter and the actions of its originators and leaders, Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Melina Abdullah. What we found out most recently is that the money, the sum amount of money that BLM has been able to raise over the time that they have started their mission and their campaigning and activisms, which I think puts us at 2013, 14, maybe. And I don't want to get that wrong, but they have amassed over $90 million. And during that time, they have been under scrutiny for a lot of different things. We know Alicia Garza, I think, retired from BLM. A lot of other properties and different houses have been brought. A lot of questions been coming in and going out of the canon, the news canon, about what's been happening with a lot of this money. So I've been hearing murmurs about it, but recently a bombshell hit when it was confirmed that a $6.4 million mansion, 6,500 square feet of property had been bought by the leaders of Black Lives Matter in Atlanta. This particular domicile is like 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. A lot of people are like, y'all got all this space and it's only 4 bedrooms. What in the world? Y'all don't even know how to buy houses good. But even outside of that, the initial purpose of this house was to be a content creator house. It was initially created to be like a campus for individuals who they were giving like fellowships to be able to come and use the space as a studio / living space to create content that amplifies the mission and some of the objectives of Black Lives Matter. That being said, we see that the space is not being used for that. There's a lot of questions, comments, concerns about how this space is being used, the transfer of ownership and names being put on certain documents and how stuff been moving. And it's a lot of skepticism. And so we'll eventually get to the nuts and bolts of this issue, but I want to reverse and zoom out a little bit and just start off with the question, like, from its emergence and its kind of solidification in our upper adolescence, in our young adulthood, and our approaches toward being, activism minded and being connected with the social space and place. What have your vibes about BLM been over time? Like, BLM popped up, we finally had a name and an organization to boost and amplify our desires from the Black community. And over time, they've gotten a lot of traction in our community. They've become a household name. What has been or what is your relationship to BLM?
Our relationship to BLM is I feel like make a distinction between the movement and the organization, especially now that I've done my research with all the stuff that's going on. There are a lot of people that really went on the grounds locally for Black Lives Matter that didn't receive none of that funding, that have been also very, critical of the founders of Black Lives Matter in terms of the organization, that, I feel like should not be erased or, negated in terms of the movement. In terms of the organization, we see this, disorganization. We see mismanagement of funds. We see a lot of disarray, not a non-transparency. So that's kind of how I think about Black Lives Matter, especially being a historian and an educator. I know that when I'm 50 years old and I'm running my classroom and my students is asking me about 2020, I feel like it's important that I make this distinction. You see what I'm saying? But that's how I see it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I was somebody that was like, when it comes to Black shit, like, I'm not about to be the nigga out there, man. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't never want to be that nigga in the other nigga's way. But like low key, me and the homies was having a conversation. Shout out to my homie Keith, old roommate. And the criticism that I always had of Black Lives Matter was that it echoed the same sentiment that Kwame Ture criticized with the civil rights movement. It's not a message to us. It's not talking to us. I believe we need more internal dialogue, conversations about like how, talking to ourselves and reaffirming things amongst ourselves. But Black Lives Matter is a plea to people that are outside of Black lives to convince them, because remember, it's typically in response to police violence, right? Systemic violence, institutional violence, right? So if we're saying to these institutions Black Lives Matter, then to me that's it's a plea outwardly talking to some other people, and it's falling on deaf ears because you're attempting to you're attempting to to attach yourself to the conscience of a group of people who don't have one. Again, quoting Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture. So my and on top of that ideological criticism of the message not being for us, also I felt there was a neoliberal criticism of the movement existing as a hashtag on social media, right? Like it's performative. You know what I mean? At best, when we just put the hashtag BLM trending, anything that can trend can't really do, can't really accomplish what Black people need type shit.
Yeah, that's fair, right?
That was always my shit.
That's fair. I think for me, and that's kind of something I was going to get at too, is I have not been able to reconcile, because I feel like, as much as Black Lives Matter is not a message for us, it can be. When we talk about, the capacity to forward, to push, to motivate a movement, like I can see how it can kind of be a rallying cry, but I definitely think that ultimately it is a negotiating and bargaining chip with individuals to see something that they're not designed or equipped to see. And so BLM has always kind of been a weird thing for me. And I'll say the reason why it's always been kind of weird for me is that I am of the firm belief that a huge reason why Black people will not ever be able to, and we see this with Black Lives Matter, I won't say will not ever be able to, but struggle mightily with organizing, is that at this day and age, and what we understand about Blackness and what makes us strong, which is the fact that we're not a monolith, right? We're not all the same, right? Black people and their experiences are very diverse and very different. That's something that makes us beautiful, but I think that's also a reason why we're not really able to organize all that effectively. It's the reason why we're not able to be on the same page, is because, we still decree and decry and speak negatively about individuals who align themselves with the Hotep agenda. So we're not having real solid conversations about, using that term Hotep, using it negatively. We see people who ascribe to a certain orientation toward Blackness, and then
agree.
Your perspective. Yeah. Then if you're gay, or if you're queer, or if you're trans, or you don't identify yourself in a certain particular way and in proximity to your sexuality, then we can't have you leading the movement. And then if you're a Black woman, you always talking out of your pocket, you get over sympathized with, and Black men get left behind. So we can't really put all our eggs in the basket with Black women because they too busy trying to be educated and be independent or whatever. So they're gonna leave Black men behind. So we can't really invest all of our energy in Black women. And then we see Black men, and that's always how it's always been. And they don't really care about us, and they're too tight in it. So there's just such an inability to negotiate who's driving, right? So many cooks, I say too many cooks in the kitchen, so many cooks that won't even get in the kitchen with each other to talk about what we eating.
Everybody want to be peace. Nobody want to be Indians.
It's rough. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, is that racist? Is that racist?
That might be a little.
Man, it might be. I probably for the first time in my life, I think it might be a little derogatory.
It might be a little. We learning. We are working in progress. And we've been taught a lot of.
So I'll retract that. A
lot of anti-indigenous idioms, right? The idea of putting things on a totem pole. I can even use that language if I wanted to describe the issue, like things are higher or lower on the totem pole. But we're not using that language because we know better. Education is elevation. We know that these phrases
totem pole
attempt to kind of distort what's happening with business folks. So back on track. With BLM is that, is the issue and the criticism I'm concerned with, and the issue that I think I have in terms of Black liberatory politics is we're not going to see another King. We're not going to see another X. We're not going to see another Booker T. We're not going to see another WEB. I don't think we're going to see another Marcus Garvey, because they had conflicts and beefs on what it looked like to remedy the Black issues. And now we've only learned more about life, learned more about textures and contours of our reality that makes it more difficult to agenda set and plan. So that's been my fear with them up to this point. But we've gotten the vibe check. Comments is kind of chiming in. We talked about how we felt about, BLM up to this point. But I guess my second question is, what was your first response or reaction or the best take, right, that you heard about this $6.4 million mansion? Like, what was your first response, or in reading and hearing about it, what's something that's like, that's the problem right there? What do you think it is?
For me, I think that it was the article that the 20 chapters of BLM made about the nonprofit industrial complex and about neoliberalism, and how Black Lives Matter organizers, founders anyway, was talking about not replicating those structures and hierarchies and how they ultimately did. To me, that is the take.
Because they are Marxists, right? They are trained Marxists.
Supposedly, but yeah, that is the take.
So for me, I think what I say,
I'll tell you self-explanatory.
What I'll say is the best take, but at the same time, like it's not good for them, but I feel like I'll call it the best take because it kind of clarified things for me, was Patrice's response in terms of why they kind of there was a slick way in which they kind of play with, like, BLM purchasing the property through an intermediary, and then it going up under an LLC, and the sneaky way in which they did it, right? She justified it by saying that it was for renovation purposes.
Mm-hmm.
The fuck does that mean? She bought a $6 million property. Yeah, I mean, and what's even worse about that is when they heard her respond with that, they was just like, nah. When it was being sold, it was listed as y'all can hop in right now. So it solidified for me that, again, like what George was saying, the nonprofit industrial complex wins again. The way that it works is, again, for the purposes of producing capital, utilizing that, because Patrice Cullors didn't do anything illegal. Let's be clear about that. And she didn't do anything that most other nonprofits do. Like, it was it was like traditional nonprofit move making. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, we don't question Haiti, or we don't question Red Cross when they talking about sending this money for Haiti, but they got, people making millions off of being on a board and shit. So it's like, when we thinking about these things, we got to understand that the criticism lies in the nonprofit industrial complex and how them as trained Marxists weren't supposed to operate within those confines. Mm-hmm. That's what they were critical of. If they didn't do nothing shady, because the same people that are saying that they bought this house and the way that they did it are also the people that are critical of them being Marxists, right? But the real criticism is that they went against their Marxist beliefs and how they in how she was moving.
I think, and maximum Ty said, I question the Red Cross. I don't trust them neither. And I agree.
No, but it's kind of right. Point is though.
I'm not down no articles about that, right? Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
I'm not dialing 90999 for nothing. Let me go with some other efforts I can align myself with and get with. I will say, and this is kind of in relation, to know what the plug was saying in terms of this is kind of how nonprofits work. This is how they function. We should be, not completely afraid and surprised by some of these things, but still critical and skeptical of a lot of it at the same time. And what I think about, I saw an article, or not an article, but a tweet that was like, man, they bought this $6.4 million mansion. They've been under scrutiny for other issues, and Ferguson still ain't got no community center. And so when I think about stuff like that, because Mike Brown was killed largely because, youth like him and youth like him didn't have a lot of stuff to do. So yeah, he gonna pop around and go buy a box of Rillos real quick. He gonna go and see what the next play is. He gonna be out there kind of meandering through the neighborhood because there are not spaces and places for young Black youth to go in a lot of these urban cores, which leads them out and renders them kind of to the violence that exists on the street. So like when we see the things that on a material level can reconcile some of these things, it's rough. The other side of it though, just on some real player shit, I was like, damn, I want y'all to have the bag. I don't have a problem with the leaders of BLM living in a mansion. Just do the other shit. I don't pay Black women what they owe. Battle fatigue is real, right? The tiredness of being a Black queer woman, just be the criticisms alone of trying to lead and do right by your community that they've had to endure over time by everybody is enough for you to be able to be compensated for being rejected and criticized and maligned for trying to liberate your people. The work that, we were hoping that you were doing, the organizing, the signal boosting, like, get your bag, baby. But there's no reason why you couldn't do the rest. Like, I think that's the biggest issue. You know what I'm saying? It's the sheer greed, the replication of white supremacy, you know what I'm saying, and neoliberalism that we already see is just like, bruh, like, look, pay Black women for their labor, but also just like that was what was hard for me, because it's just like
breakthroughs, Toya, breakthroughs.
Okay, what happened? You said, okay, I got it now. Live well, but also do the work. 1000%. I think we're past the idea of free labor. I don't think any activisms have to, reduce you to living and slumming or whatever. There just needs to be some type of balance and integrity between what you're bringing in and what you're taking out. That's been the biggest criticism of Sean King, and what's had him be so highly scrutinized as Talcum X and every other idiom that people have come up with to talk about him.
Talcum X is the best, though.
It is one of my favorites. It really resonates in my heart, but it's because you couldn't even do the play right. Nobody's telling you that you should be subjugated to poverty or empire. Like, we don't want that. We want our leaders to live well, right? To be well supported, to do all the things that they can do to provide for their families, to show what it can look like.
Just do the work.
When you are applying your knowledge of the system to do things to uplift yourself and your family, right? You become a blueprint for what we could be doing at the crib. Just don't manipulate us. Like, don't play us like that. That's the rough part about it, and that's where my heart dropped with the situation, because I didn't like how they were in the play. So
can I ask y'all a question real quick?
Please.
Do y'all think that? I mean, did they really stand a chance though? Because again, did Black Lives Matter really stand a chance?
No, hell no.
That wasn't the question.
Because again, I'm a strong believer of like all social media activism. You know what I'm saying? And this is no disrespect to anybody that's doing anything on social media, but all social media activism is performative activism, because it's media nonetheless. We may have access to social media outside of the ways that we've had access to traditional media, but where the money is made, who has the overall influence on what gets seen, and all those other things still match how traditional media is disseminated. So when we give, like when Lee, for example, has the biggest platform clearly on this platform, I mean, his work is still to the benefit of TikTok, because what he's doing is bringing more people to the TikTok platform to listen to him, right? Just like BLM as a hashtag brought more people to social media as a way to display their activism, because I can't walk up to you and be like, hashtag BLM. Like, hey, bro, I know you. Right. You feel me? But you can be like, man, I'm mad at the world. Hashtag BLM. And it means something. It attaches you to a politic.
It does.
You feel me? It attaches you to a politic. And so to me, I think like once it became big because of social media and because of it being a trending thing, this was always going to have the type of money that was included. This was always going to be the result. I mean, unless y'all have a different perspective to that somehow speaks to something otherwise. Because I've been saying the same criticism since 2016, so I'm not necessarily surprised. I ain't necessarily hating on them, because I also believe, like what Toya said, hey, get your money. Get your money. But when they come for you, just make sure you're doing the other things that you're able to shield yourself and say, like, yeah, we doing this, but they got this.
Yeah, I feel like they ain't stand a chance in terms of no matter what they did with the money, no matter how they spent it or how they didn't spend it. We know that the people that's criticizing them was going to be writing these criticisms. And I know that the thing that I'm kind of not looking forward to, that I'm thinking of right now, sticking out loud, like right now where I live at, I be around a lot of like white people in many different instances. And what I know that when I live, you know what I'm saying, like living in Texas, being around more black people, conservatives do a masterful job in spoon feeding my people bullshit ass information. So just reading some of y'all comments right now, I ain't even gonna say y'all name. You see what I'm saying? But a lot, I can tell when people haven't researched and just regurgitating some bullshit. Cause just like, yeah, I leave it at that. I just leave it at that.
That's fair. One thing I want to, Angela, you had said, can we start earlier? I'm tired. This is my moment where I go ahead and do because we feel you. We late today, work obligations, everybody beat. If you go ahead and get your rest, just go listen to the rest of the episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, go watch it on YouTube later, go watch it on Facebook later. We're definitely not trying to keep y'all up. We know we got to organize our lives around reality, 3 different people, 2 different time zones, trying to make it work. So if we ever too late for y'all, we get it. Y'all got to dip. Just go catch the rest of it real quick on Apple Pod, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Facebook, and we'll do it like that. But now, a lot of people are saying a lot of poignant things in the comments that I think, deserve a lot of traction. One of the things that caught my eye that I want to talk about wanted to point out real fast is, where'd it go? I think it was something that David Williamson has said, something about, because, and this is something I've also had
leaders.
Not even so-called leaders, but the fact that I'm explaining it. It was that Black Lives Matter was not originated by a Black person, right? And that a white person is behind the puppeteer. And I even think David made the assertion that the NAACP is kind of the same way. I've always been kind of, because, the George Soros conspiracy theory, with the NAACP, I don't really know what you mean when you say Black people aren't around the origination of the
Niagara movement. The Niagara movement.
I won't lie, as if, we don't know everything that's happening behind the curtain. I don't know what it means for George Soros to, I guess, bankroll it. He's the person kind of pulling the I don't know what to do with any of those criticisms. And I think that's what also exasperates me about Black development and building Black things, is that oftentimes, on one side, we demand that white people have a real confrontation with their privilege, which means looking at the resources they have and giving that shit up, right? This is why we celebrate, I hate to call her this, Melinda, no, that's not Melinda Gates. I forget Jeff Bezos' wife, and I don't want to call him ex-wife, and I don't want to just refer to her as the ex-wife without talking about her real name, but she was able to give up billions. Now, I don't know if it's because of a confrontation with anti-Blackness, and that's what she had, but we know that we demand that billionaires and trillionaires and people with all the money give it up. If you're real about what you're talking about, come up off your shit. I don't care about what book you read. I don't care about what little quote the money. But the other side of it is that we are highly critical if we are to discover that behind the curtain, there are white people kind of contributing that money and bankrolling and funding the movements of Black people. So it's kind of hard, because it's like, which one is it? Are we mad that white people giving up their shit? Or are we excited for white people giving up their shit and Black people being in the face of how things look and what it looks like to move forward? And so there's some tension there that I haven't really figured out how to reconcile, but I like to believe that off of bread is good as long as you ain't trying to call shots. That's where it gets weird. Then people say George Soros has this other agenda attached to BLM, which is why it's all kaput. Go ahead.
Well, because I think BLM and NAACP are like 2 great parallels, because they suffer from similar criticism. You know what I mean? In terms of who has a hand in how they're, like, where they get resources from, right? Mm-hmm. The NAACP, for example, you can be critical of white people being involved with the NAACP's foundation, right? But the same people that are critical of the NAACP are also critical of somebody like W.B. Du Bois and his relationship with white institutions, right? But they also leave out the fact that Marcus Garvey, who most people put in conflict with W.B. Du Bois because of their ideological differences. Well, they did have a little conflict. W. Du Bois did write up a little, like, if it was some shade thrown at that time, it came from a light skin. But W.B. Du Bois are Mark. I'm talented. I'm a talented temp. Believe me. You know what I'm saying? We ain't gonna do that. But but Marcus Garvey did meet with the Ku Klux Klan. He had conversations with the KKK. He spoke with racists, right? There's an understanding that if you're doing anything for Black people, you're going to come into contact or conflict with white people. How you want that to go? You know what I'm saying? Do you want contact to turn into something that can be productive for the overall mission? Yeah. Or do you want conflict because the principle is resisting whiteness? This is the double consciousness. It's the reality of being Black in a society that's built off the degradation of Black people. Absolutely. Right? And so while the criticism of how people move when they not even attach themselves to white people, but allow the presence of whiteness within certain movements to exist, the reality is you can either use that to your benefit or use it for something where you end up undermining yourself?
And it's your choice to choose. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to invite some white folk to the door, you got to kind of navigate. And I think you got to make sure there's no such thing as the right white folk, because the insidiousness of anti-blackness is so deep in them. They start doing shit they don't even realize they doing. Like, you're really whiting right now. I don't think you recognize that.
But Toya, can we all speak to like how we all have our white people though? Like white people that's been useful. I mean, I'm sorry. And I realized even in the some comments on our videos were saying like I'm more conservative than the motherfucker. Like I'm gonna say this shit that. But listen, we have like our like niggas have they white people, right? Yeah. And you've been in a position, you've been involved with a certain institution, and that one white person.
And that's the homie. That's the homie forever now.
You exactly, and they like, hey, I'm gonna make sure you straight. Because I know how they do.
I don't think Noella's with us tonight, but shout out to my homegirl.
Shout out to Noella.
But you do, and I think, you know, individuals who have no stake or no interest or investment in being in the way and just kind of feel good about giving their shit away and leaving you space to vibe out. Those have been some of the best white folk who have been in my life, and then also the ones who are doing the work, right? And I think the ones that I'm able to check and be like, you're doing too much now. You're out of pocket. You're talking that's your neck. You're talking out of that's not your mouth. That is your neck. Like, those are the types of folk that I can at least fathom the idea of, you know, coalition building with to make sure that we're moving forward. I do like what I think Tori said. It's a sad fact, but I believe it's okay as long as they're silent partners. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's the investment in calling the shots and guiding and directing things that makes it work. So I'll leave off. You know, I think we're over an hour right now. That kind of concludes the conversation, but I will leave it and punctuate what we're talking about by saying that I'm still hopeful that we find a way as Black folk to organize around something in a meaningful and effective direction. I definitely loved, you know, 2 years ago, seeing us pour into the streets in our communities and stand together to say no, to reject that type of violence. But, you know, I think we are longing for, as a people, not to have somebody die, not for it to mean somebody to lose their life, for us to stand up together and say, this is some shit we ain't dealing with no more. Here's what we about to do. And I think that will be the beacon of light and hope that we have and that I have in the future of not BLM necessarily, because they've lost me, but with some orientation toward a greater future and more progressive politics for Black folk. That's that on that. In terms of, I don't even think I called this a chop. We'll call it the
culture chop.
The culture chop. It can't act like it could be a political chop. It'll be the culture chop. And we'll vibe through it that way. And shoot, some of the last things I'll say to y'all are just about making sure y'all keep up with the show at the Chop Up Show Pod on Twitter, Chop Up Show on Instagram, and talk to us. Keep us on the tip. Like, one thing y'all could be using our DMs for is to be like, have you heard about this? Are you thinking about this? Is it on your radar? We can't guarantee we're gonna talk about it, but we would love to be thinking a little bit more about
what I want to hear about.
For real. And then you know that it's coming from the Chop Up. So you're not about to get some surface level bullshit out your ass kind of conversation. Like, if y'all, you know, what y'all want us to go in depth about, let us know.
Yeah, and we'll see if it aligns with kind of our lane, what we know about, what we can kind of research and get into, and we'll rock with it if we feel like it fits. So just, you know, no guarantees, no promises, but definitely tap the DMs if y'all got stuff throughout the week that you like, hey, look into this for us, and we'll see if it makes it to the show.
Hey, and I'm so delayed over here. I think it's messing with my engagement, man. I'm so delayed over here. I can just see it is weird.
Yeah. A little bit, but you still tap in, and we still love you. And you still you're talking in real time, even if it's delayed a little bit.
It is a little weird. I see you caught on to that, but it's all good. Lee tied anyway. We got seated tomorrow, so
I got to catch the flight in the morning, man.
The cross-examination debate associate. All of us are seated legends.
Real quick in the chat, drop your podcast again. What was you saying? Plug.
Oh yeah, you're talking to 3 seated legends.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like so that don't mean nothing. No.
2012 6 speaker semi-finalist, baby. We almost took it out, but it was some raggedy ass politics happen. We don't get into that story right now. Just know we almost won it out. Just know I was almost a national champion, but it's fine. We digress.
Hey, man. 8th speaker.
I ain't gonna pull it off my.
That was my highest 8th speaker of seated.
Hey,
but it is what it is.
Hey, I see that was 4.
Okay. All right, okay.
I'm stuttering.
We eat on this podcast, baby. If y'all want to talk, if y'all got some stuff y'all want us to debate about too, send that to DM. We can talk about it. We can debate.
Because we we need another debate me too. We need a new one. I think COVID was the last one.
Check out Hope's Place. That's Tori's podcast. We've been going back and forth about it. Subscribe. But don't forget to subscribe to the Chop Up Show too. Apple Podcasts, everywhere. Spotify, YouTube, everything. And if you follow Consciously, follow the Chop Up Show. If you follow the Chop Up Show, go follow Consciously. That way you don't miss a beat. I think that covers everything. Plug. I'm gonna turn it back to you. You know what to do.
That's everything. Check this out. Our SEO is on point. If you Google the Chop Up Show, you're gonna find us. If you want to see where we at, Google the Chop Up Show. You will find us. With that being said, we're going to close the show. The same day that we start the show. We out of here. We see y'all next week. It's all love. Peace.
In the city, we gon' slide, bet I be there pronto. Me, my guys, we really live. Lord forgive me, pay my tithes. Please don't have me reach inside, and that's in the console. Keep the semi when I ride. Lit off Henny.